This is a very simple video on React. So this video explains basic concepts of the React application, like how we design the React apps and how the React app is made up of different components, and what is a state, what is a static components, and what is a dynamic components. So I will explain these simple and very important concepts in React. So to explain this, I have got one example here, and as you can see, we have got a simple app, and as I said, a React application is made up of a component tree, and in this particular React app there are three components. The app is the top component. Okay, so I'll just highlight. So this is the app component, and as you can see, the render method of that app component has got another two components, header and main. So if you come here, that is how the app is looking like. So at the top you can see this is the header component. So this one is the header component, and all the remaining portion is the main component. Okay, so at the top, app component, and then the app component has got two child components, the header and main. You can also look at this component tree in the React dev tools as well. So if you go to the codesandbox.io, this website, as you can see right now I am on the codesandbox.io. There is something called as a React dev tools. So you can see here, and if you want to see the component tree, you can just click on that, and on the left hand side you can see the component tree. So at the top there is an app component. Okay, or there you can see, so there is app component, and then app component has got two child components, header and main. Now right now I have kept it simple just to make it easy to understand. Otherwise a typical application has got like lots of nested child components, but this is a very basic application where I have got one app component at the top, and then two child components, so one header and another one is main. And as you can see, this is how it is looking like. It's very basic. I have not added any CSS, but that should be fine. So at the top there is a header component, and then at the bottom there is a main component. So main component has got the state, while the header component at the top doesn't have a state. Now let me explain what is a state. State is basically something that changes on the component. For example, in the header component it is all static data, nothing is changing, like there is no user interaction happening there, and there is no dynamic data as well. Like for example, when the user logs in, the user that has been logged in, that user information is like a, we can say it's a kind of a dynamic data. So in the header component we are not storing anything, so that is why that is, we can call it as a static component. But if you look at the main component, there is a increment decrement button where user can click on those buttons and then something will happen. So in this particular application, what is going to happen is that counter you can see there at the top, just above the increment button, there is it is showing 0. So that count is basically the state of this component. Okay, this main component, and it is not related to the header component at all. So that is the beauty of the React components. So you can have the localized state for the components, and it doesn't interfere with other components. But in most of the applications you will have to share the state as well. But right now let us keep it simple. Just remember that a component can have a state, and in this particular main component we have got one state, that is a count. And as user interacts with these buttons, increment or decrement, that state is going to change. So if you click on increment, that state is changing, like that count is incrementing, and if you click on decrement, that count is decrementing. So how it is happening behind the scene is that as soon as you click on the, say, increment, basically the state is changing, and when the state is changed for the component, what happens is there is a render method that gets called. Okay, the React component has got a life cycle methods. So during the mount phase, that render method gets called, and then React checks what has changed. Okay, state, this count has changed, and then accordingly it will update the UI. So let me explain you how this is working. Let me go take you to the code of these components. So here is our code. This is the main app.js app component, and as you can see, this is how we declare this app component: export default function app, and then there is a return statement. In the return statement, basically whatever you want to render, you can show it, like write that code. So we want to render two components, header and main, in this particular component, so that's why we have written it. And then what you see here is this is called as the fragments. Okay, so basically whatever you want to return, you have to wrap it in the either the fragment or the block element, for example div, because you can't return the standalone elements like multiple elements. You have to wrap all the multiple elements in the div or this fragment. So that's why I have given this syntax. Now let us go to the header and main component. So first of all, let's go to the header component. So that is our header component. It's very simple header component. All we are doing here is we are printing this console.log rendering header, and then we are returning this text. This is the header. That's it. It's a very simple component. There is no state at all. Can you see any state here? No state at all. So state is there in the main component. So let's go to the main component here, and you can see we have got the state here. And to create the state in the function components, you need to import this use state from this React module. As you can see at the top, we have imported this use state. And whenever there is a state for the component, we have to have the event handlers. Like in this example, there is an increment button and decrement button. So we have to add the handlers for those buttons. Like when the user clicks on those buttons, what should happen? So basically we have to change the state. So we have added those handlers here. So this is how typical React application is built. So you can see there is a click add handler. So this code gets executed when the user clicks on add or increment button, and there is another method that is click remove, or the when the user clicks on the decrement button. So basically what is happening in these methods is we are changing the state. Nothing is happening, or we are just console logging that user has clicked on that button, and then set count. So this is the method that is being executed to change the state. I'll get back to that in a short while. So for the function based component, that is how you tell the component that to specify that a component has got the state, use this particular syntax, use state, and in the parenthesis you need to specify the initial state for the component. So initial state for the component is 0. Okay, we are just storing simple integer value, but in most of the applications you will have to store, like for example, if you are working on the e-commerce application where there is a shopping cart, so the state of that particular application will have like cart items, for example, or if the user has logged in, user information, so that will be the another state. So that is how you can determine the state of the particular application, something that keeps changing. Okay, or the data that you want to store in the application, that can be stored in the state. And use state returns basically this object, and there are two things here. There is a count, so that is a state, and set count. So this is the function that can be used to change the state. So you can give any name that you want here. So I have given the count and set count. So this is a user defined variables. Now this is about the state. Next thing that you want to remember is that now in a typical function component there will be a return statement which returns what will be rendered in the UI. So in here this part is getting rendered. So as I showed you, there is increment decrement button. So as you can see, there is this button, increment and decrement buttons are being rendered here. And also another important thing you need to remember is there is a event handler. So once user clicks on increment, what should happen? We have got this click add function that should be called. So click add function is at the top over there, and when the user clicks on the decrement button, we have got another function that gets called. So in increment event handler, we are incrementing the count, and in decrement event handler we are decrementing the count. So let me show you again. So if you go here, so these are the buttons I'm talking about. Okay, increment, decrement. Now another important thing that I wanted to show you is how the render happens. So let me refresh this. So when the page gets refreshed, the state is also removed, or the state is reset. So initial state is 0, that's why it is being shown as 0. Now let me refresh again, and you can see here as you can see, when the component or the application is loaded, first of all, in the console you can see it is saying rendering header and then rendering main. So these two components are getting rendered, and obviously the app component is also getting rendered. Now if I click on the increment, let us see what is happening. So I clicked on the increment, and then what happened is it said clicked on the increment, and then it said rendering main. But this time around you can notice that rendering header is not printed. That means the render method for that header component is not called. The reason being, when I click on the increment button, the state of this main component is getting changed. Okay, and that is the reason only the render method of that specific component will get called. The header component will be untouched, and that is the beauty of the React application. Every component has got the separate or the local state, and it doesn't impact the other components. That's it in today's video. If you have more questions related to the React, you can definitely contact me. I will definitely try to help you, because right now I got really good experience, hands-on experience on the React applications. Also I know about the Redux as well. So any doubt, any queries related to the React application, you can definitely count on me. Thanks for watching this video.